Hi everyone and welcome to another edition of Content Melbourne. My name is Mark Welker. Behind the scenes I've got the rest of the team. I've got Gemma Bauman, Julia Fernandez, Justin Meneguzzi and our newest team member, Ross Green. They're going to be helping out with questions as we go. So if you're just joining us for the first time, and you probably might not know too much about what Content Melbourne is all about, so we are a community for industry professionals and content creators. We do a range of digital and in-person events during the year. You can check out the LinkedIn page in the description below for a bit more detail. But yeah, jump on board. We try and do these every 2 weeks, and hopefully soon, cross fingers, in-person events will start up again. Before we get started, I want to put out a big shout out to our sponsor, and let me just put them up on the page right now. Team Content. They've been helping us out now for a number of years, and we really appreciate their support. You can go check them out. Their details are in the description below. Okay, so this is the third session, as I said, of our Content in Crisis session. So today we're talking video. We're going to talk about how you can get videos made during a period of lockdown, and also a little bit about how formats might change in the future. You know, it's a really interesting time for video with everyone on video all the time, and we're all sort of getting a new view of the world through other people's studies and lounge rooms, and we're going to sort of see how we go with that. We're going to start with some basics on video, and Christie's going to give us a bit of an insight into Janeiro. But during the session, if you've got questions, pop them in the chat, or you can follow us along on Twitter and get the lowdown there. We'll try to get to the questions as we go, but just carry along. Okay, for now, I'd like to introduce Christie Poulos from Janeiro. Hi, Christie. How you going?
Great, thanks. How are you?
Oh, good. I'm good. You're working from home, I see.
Yes, I'm in my office slash playroom. My playroom, not my kids' playroom.
So tell us a little bit about Janeiro first. Let's get that over and done with.
Sure. Well, Janeiro, we're an Australian-born business, Melbourne headquartered, but global business with offices around the world. And Janeiro is effectively a technology platform which connects brands and businesses with a big global community of professional creative businesses. We started out in video, music video, in fact, but now make all sorts of video content, design, digital content for brands and businesses. And it's just the new way to create better, faster, more cost-effective content for all the different hungry channels out there.
And how did you get into video? Like, you've got an interesting past.
Man, I've been in video for quite a long time, but I came at it from a content perspective rather than the sort of traditional production route. So I worked for a very long time in communications, and I started specialising in action sports right in the beginning of my career. So, and not surprisingly, visual content was a really big part of how to communicate action sports brands and events. So we got stuck into making our own content. This is way back in the 90s. And then that led me to Red Bull, where I was lucky enough to join the business at a time that video content was just becoming enormous, and the Red Bull Media House was launching. So I got involved in that and ran video content for the UK business for a while. And that's kind of led me through twists and turns of content marketing, using video throughout the funnel, and to help clients and brands achieve their marketing objectives through content, to now working at Janeiro, where it's the biggest, broadest, deepest, most crazy pool of video and marketing and content creation, working with all sorts of really talented businesses around the world.
What do you like about video production? Because it is a strange offshoot of content. It's got its own peculiarities.
I think that I love that. So I love the fact that it's like a kind of an obsession, that there's so much to learn and so much to know. I've always really loved content in general, and video particularly, because it's really tangible. It's actually, often in marketing, you can spend a lot of time working on stuff that doesn't exist or that only exists for moments, and video is a little bit more lasting. And I love the technical side of it. I'm constantly learning that. Obviously, it's pretty challenging if you're not a technical video producer to keep up with stuff, but that's always exciting. But I guess ultimately it's storytelling. There I've said it in the first few minutes, and it's a really fun, engaging format where you can actually entertain people or inspire them or surprise them or just inform them in a really quick and engaging way.
Yeah, I agree. It's a wild ride, and it keeps you constantly on your toes. No 2 days are the same. Let's talk about how sort of Janeiro has seen the sort of video production market up to 2020. Like where does the Janeiro model sort of where is it born from?
Well, I think we've been around for about 11 years, and the founders of the business were both brand side digital marketers who just saw a big gap opening up where video was becoming more and more necessary, and brands were needing more and more of it and faster and more cost effectively, but it was actually still stuck in quite an old-fashioned mode, particularly through the traditional kind of production and agency models. It was very slow and it was expensive, and they saw an opportunity to connect all these amazing smaller independent creative businesses and freelancers, and with this new technology making video more available and accessible, and the democratization of the whole industry, they saw they could potentially help brands and businesses tap into all of those trends. So I think since the beginning, it's just been an upward rise. We were obviously, the beginning of 2020, video was continuing to grow, and it's definitely been several years now where video has been one of those top trends in content and marketing, and that's not abating in any way. I think more and more channels, more and more formats, more and more different ways to deliver video, which is making it more challenging for clients to keep up, I think, with the volume required and the iteration required, and just quite frankly, the budgets are always going to continue to be stretched. So in a way, the beginning of 2020 doesn't look that different to now when it comes to video, obviously with some market outliers. But yeah, we're seeing more brands diving into video in all different shapes and sizes and types, whereas perhaps before it was reserved for only B2C clients, for example. Now it's very much prevalent throughout B2B. Yep. And the different types of content that you can use to achieve your goals is just ever growing. We partner globally with Facebook and with Google, so a lot of what we do is really bound up in their platforms and how they are growing and evolving, and that's obviously been lots of change there. But I think that we're definitely seeing video and just visual content in general becoming more sophisticated, more necessary, and more in demand.
And what do you see that clients are looking for in this space? Because it's an interesting model in the sense that you're sort of connecting creators with a brief direct from a client, but and sort of what makes that relationship work and not work from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, a little on the process. It's quite simple, but basically our platform enables clients to publish a brief, and creatives in the community, if they're interested, can pitch on that brief. The client sets the budget and the parameters of the brief, so for clients, I guess the appeal is an element of scale, that they're able to quickly and effectively meet lots of different potential partners without having to kind of pick up the phone and without having to have that specialist knowledge of the industry. Something that's perhaps been reserved for production managers and producers and agency creative teams. Clients are now able to sort of simulate that and scale that really quickly. It means that for creatives, they're able to see opportunities that they would never normally get exposure to or access to. And really what we're trying to do is facilitate all the good bits about creative collaborations between clients and creative businesses, and streamline it and smooth it out and make it as easy as possible for everyone to get to the really good bit, which is coming up with ideas and making content.
Yep.
So that's kind of, in a nutshell, I guess, where we see ourselves fitting in. What that means in reality is it's faster, it's cheaper, and it's definitely more, often the content that you'll get for your budget is better than perhaps going through the more traditional models. And that's the appeal for clients for sure.
And let's talk about what's changed since, what are we, in week 10 or so of lockdown? I feel like it's been longer than that. My hair is definitely getting longer and woollier. I haven't had a haircut in 9 weeks, which is just past my threshold.
What about live haircuts today?
So what do you think, and so what was the trend in video consumption going into 2020? I mean, you mentioned it briefly. I mean, I don't think it's any surprise for people to say that video was increasing. Do you sort of feel like it is still increasing? How do you feel like that trend might shift now?
Yeah, look, I think it's probably a bit too soon to say what's happening with that trend, because obviously the pandemic hit and quite a lot of things instantly happened. Like brands, a lot of businesses instantly stopped doing whatever they were doing just because they didn't know what to do. So I'm not sure if that's hopefully that's not a sign of a long-term trend. That's just what happened in that moment. But yeah, definitely, mobile driving, video consumption, mobile driving, different types of behaviors around content. We are, the trend towards shorter content was definitely something that, has been, I guess, a painful transition for me. And, over time is that, if you're used to making a lovely long form documentary, it's quite upsetting to realize that actually the most effective content might be less than 10 seconds. But that's just the nature of some of these beasts like Facebook and Google platforms. Mm-hmm. Vertical, obviously, like that's not new news, but I think the last stragglers are just realizing that, you need to think vertically and produce vertically if you're planning on using those platforms. If you're planning on showing your content to people on a mobile phone, then you need to be aware of that. And more than 50% of video consumption, close to 60 now, is on mobile.
Yep.
And another sort of, it's not a video trend per se, but something that we were observing over the last 12 to 24 months was just the trend towards in-housing, clients of all different shapes and sizes building out their own in-house capability, some for just media, where performance marketing was kind of home, and that's a big driver of video content now, or whether it's having full creative teams, production capability, an in-house agency service, or a smaller team that works within marketing. So that's a big trend that we've been looking at over the last period of time, and one where the Janeiro model can fit really nicely and help support those internal teams to scale. And I think that's one of those trends that will also carry on. So I do think video will continue to rise. I do think that, will be the trend towards volume as well as quality is also going to continue. Mm-hmm. And the trend towards shorter as well as longer forms, obviously. And that whether we're going to be working more directly with clients, as well as the more conventional agency relationships that we're probably more used to up until now.
So we're all going to be producing more video, which is great. I'm happy about that. But there are...
I don't know if you're getting more money.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for that. I'm sure it's in the pipeline. I've heard that video production is lucrative, and I'm just waiting for that money shower to fall on me. We're getting there. But it's harder to produce video. Like at the exact time when we're hitting sort of like some sort of next peak, we were talking about TikTok before we came to air. Video production is also a bit of a challenge right now. So let's just talk through some of the sort of the restrictions that are currently in place. Some of the things that make it hard to go out and make a video right now.
Yeah, look, as always, it's all about perspective. It's all about where you're standing. So, in our community, we have a lot of small businesses who already work remotely from home, and a lot of them focus in post-production, animation, and editing. And for those guys, nothing's really changed except that they're kind of suddenly, I always say they're kind of like the quiet achievers of video that have suddenly found themselves like the star celebrities on the front line, because so much of the instant limitations meant that a lot of clients were going to ground using existing assets or repurposing different types of content into video. For example, out of home creative suddenly became a little bit useless. And so a lot of clients were busily trying to figure out how to turn those out of home assets into digital, social first or even TV assets. So we've seen that kind of sector of the creative community very, very busy and not held back at all. In fact, probably, hopefully some of them are getting more or different work than they'd ever had before. But then, of course, on the live production side of things, instantly, it was hard just to go to the shops, let alone get 20, 30 people in a room and, create content in the traditional way. So I'm sure that the folks watching know more about, are closer to the front line and know more about that than I do. But what we did at Janeiro is the team quickly kind of swung into action to try and lean into our community a little bit to try and provide some help to clients and creatives to understand what's available to them as far as production opportunities. And we're a global platform. We have clients all over the world and creatives all over the world. So partly what we were able to do as well is connect clients with creatives in different markets, different places where perhaps the restrictions aren't quite so intense, to enable them to move forward. So for some clients where moving forward was really essential, like they just didn't have the opportunity to pause and wait, big FMCG businesses where, you still need to sell toothpaste, you still need to sell, baby wipes, you still need to sell, foods and things, supermarket type products. And they're like, we just want to keep moving forward with our communications. So using a platform like Janeiro and our production readiness map, which is published on our site, they were able to kind of see, where can I do what I need to do? How can I move forward? Sorry, go on.
And do you think, Christie, we sort of know that there are, there's things like the 1.5 meter rule and things like that. But in Australia, video production is an essential business. We can carry on with what. What's your sense of, are brands reluctant to do live action production because of cost, because of the idea that it's risky and they might get caught out, if someone did the wrong thing? What is it there? Are they waiting?
I think a lot of brands, a lot of bigger, more kind of established risk-averse businesses are, just going to add this to their list of things to think about and worry about. And so we've seen big brands like Unilever, for example, very quickly brought in their own production guidelines for all of the, the partners they were working with, so that they knew that they were providing that from the sort of top down and, the inside out. Whereas most of our clients, I think, probably are more reliant on hearing from the creatives what they can do, how they will go about doing it. In truth, most clients don't think about these sorts of risks. Most clients, as we all know, have no idea what goes into a shoot and all the different things, all the boxes that needs to be checked. And, like they're still a bit surprised when you ask for money for catering. So that's, sometimes I don't think there's a lot of clients really worrying about it too much. But certainly, I think for many, it was just how can we continue to move forward, especially when your budgets are sometimes, being reduced or frozen or chopped altogether. So that's been, obviously, cost is a big factor. It always is with video. We're always the most expensive thing and the first to go or whatnot, but even more so now.
And do you think that, have you noticed a change in the types of briefs that have come through over the last 6 weeks and maybe are still coming through? Like, are brands sort of using this time in video to do something different to what they were?
I think so. I think it's both. That I think we're seeing a lot of brands just kind of forging ahead and doing what they need to do, and then allowing the creatives who are, in our community, who are really like ingenious, really. They're really great at coming up with solutions, like all creatives, to get around things, and they're just letting them figure it out and move forward with those. And then we've got other clients where, where, for example, like a beauty brand, Essie, make nail polish, and we worked with us to edit up a bunch of influencer content that had been self-shot at home on mobile. So, it's really that kind of, utilizing that much more authentic UGC style content, but using it in a professional way, suddenly seems to become a lot more acceptable. Obviously beauty brands have been playing in that UGC space for a long time, but right now that's all they've got to work with. So they're making the best of that. And then other brands where they've had to pivot, they had a live action shoot planned, and really quickly they've had to turn that into an animation production because it just wasn't going to be possible to achieve. So we worked with Ben & Jerry's, for example, and they recently did that and sort of took their production from one format into another just to be able to keep moving forward and do what they need to do.
Yeah.
And then I guess we're seeing lots of interesting briefs from businesses that are launching brand new products or brand new services that they didn't have before. So they're suddenly experimenting with their whole business model, let alone their communications. So, that in itself brings sort of speed and budget changes because, this is an experiment for us. We can't go all in on this until we know it's going to work. So we need something that's a bit more, nimble and quicker and, more cost effective. And so that's quite interesting. To observe businesses who are literally changing their whole approach to what they do.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anecdotally, from some of the people I've spoken to from different brands, but also from agencies, because some of the agencies that we've worked with, the feedback has been that sort of brands have gone through this initial sort of shock phase, and now we're just entering this phase called "What is life like after lockdown?" It's sort of like an optimistic, what do we say as we're emerging, which is so interesting because I feel like for at least 4 weeks there, it was like, try not to say anything that will offend anyone and try to feel very supportive and try not to look like you're spending any money. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that definitely is changing? Do you feel like in the last, that we are sort of looking forward now rather than, staying in one place?
Oh, definitely. I think, there was definitely that sudden, it was like being like caught up in a bubble, and you just we couldn't see out of the bubble and we couldn't move out of the bubble and we're a bit afraid to pop the bubble. And so I think for a while there, everyone was very much just like frozen. And like you say, didn't want to do the wrong thing or just weren't even sure if they were going to have money, let alone a job in a few weeks. That was an interesting dynamic for everyone, of course, and still is. I think that some brands and businesses are just like, we're just going to keep moving forward with what we need to do. And this is even more so than before, we now need to just keep moving forward and be really efficient and be really focused. I think, I just saw that, the Aldi campaign, it's a pandemic campaign, but it was, special effects and humor and flashy and, I'm sure it wasn't as expensive as some of their other campaigns, but it was definitely not it wasn't somebody on a Zoom call talking. It was, creative and fun. And I think there's a lot of brands who are like, that's just who we are. We can do what we need to do. And I think people are sick of hearing about coronavirus, messaging. So, there's some research showing that lots of people are happy to hear about anything else but that. Yep. So that's an opportunity for some brands. But if you're a bank, if you're in the health sector, like obviously, it's a lot more sensitive and difficult, but if you're selling toilet paper, people still just kind of want to hear about toilet paper. Although I don't know if anyone actually wants to hear about toilet paper, but it's a necessary thing.
I still like to hear about toilet paper every now and then, just to make sure that there's a steady. I like that particular industry to be like a flat level, or maybe just a slight upward tick.
It's also psychological safety that we didn't know.
That's right. I'm going to take a question. So someone in the chat just asked, we're on a live chat now. A lot of people are sort of using this format, and we're going to talk particularly about what is authentic and whether that's sort of changing. But before we do that, what do you think about live streaming as a tactic going forward for brands? I don't know whether Janeiro plays in this space, whether they do help out with that sort of stuff.
We do. I mean, because our community, we have every type of business in there. So we have definitely been doing some live work, through our relationship with Facebook. Obviously live is a big component, and YouTube as well, a big component of how they encourage clients to engage. I don't know, my background in live was sports, and that's quite a specific reason to be live, music and any kind of exclusive experience that, you can't access in any other way. It's a great reason to go live. And I think everybody's probably attended some kind of house party or, live DJ set on Facebook, whether it's a friend or, a professional. So as we cannot get together physically and go to these events and have these experiences, I do think that live, alongside other sort of experiential video techniques like AR, is going to be more relevant for a period of time, because we have to bridge that gap. Brands need to bridge that gap between themselves and people, and that's the role that experiential and face-to-face stuff would really take. And I think video is always the next best thing to experiential and face-to-face in that respect. But then on the other hand, the question I've always asked with live is why live? Like, why do you have to be live? Why can't this be pre-recorded? Why can't this be improved by edit and post-production? Probably most people will still consume content on demand, even if it was offered live in the first place. So, I guess it's going to be different reasons for different uses of live. But I think if it's helping people have an experience they can't have it any other way, then perfect.
Yeah, I think so. I think because we ask ourselves the same question about this, whether we should be doing this live or not. And I think our reason is probably similar to what you're talking about. We don't have an in-person experience, and so we have to simulate it. And that's why we hope that people participate in the chat so that we can have this sort of conversation, rather than if all we wanted to do was teach you something, we could pre-record this, edit out all the boring bits, and just do, I'm sure you would still be 20 minutes long with all your insight.
Like a minute and a half max.
But it would definitely be shorter and tighter, and probably have a nice music track or something like that. But yeah, we are definitely leaning on, okay, what do we got for an experience? I've got another question here about split testing video. This is interesting because I used to work in data analytics a long time ago, and split testing was like my day-to-day job. And when I got into video 10 years or so ago, I always thought that split testing, we're definitely going to do that. But to this day, I've never run a split test on a video.
Interesting. Yeah, look, well, I think I sort of mentioned performance media and marketing before, and that's definitely been an area that I've learned more than I ever knew about it in the sort of year and a bit since I joined Janeiro, because of the work that we're doing with Google and Facebook particularly. And yeah, I do. It comes down to, in any kind of media arrangement, you've got the kind of creative and the nerd, and often, there's a few people that are both, but in general, there'll be a team of people that figure out how to, reach people through media channels, in digital, obviously that could be social or programmatic or digital video, whatever. And they're not usually the people that are coming up with the ideas and creating the content. So usually they're a bit too far apart for that to be very effective. But where I've definitely seen teams where they work really closely, where they've got good systems between the two, or where the performance person understands the role of creativity and is pushing for different types of content to try. And I think that experimental mindset that you see in the performance side of things is really valuable, and you don't necessarily see it as much on the video side, but which I think may be something to do with that legacy of the director's vision, that the director understood exactly what needed to be done, and this idea of, it's quite inflexible sometimes. It's a bit like, no, this is the right way to do it. And you'd hire the director for their vision and then they'd execute that. And heaven help you if you had thoughts about different ways of doing things or trying out a few different things. But if you can bring the creative vision together with that experimental mindset, I think really interesting things can happen. Very, very dull things can also happen where you test out, tiny little differences in colours and changes in copy and text. But, for content that's about driving some sort of action, that's really important to know which works best. But unfortunately for the creatives, we often don't get into the testing side of things, and it's hard to connect those two.
Yeah, that's right. I think that the winner of the test is usually the person that designed the test, and how they designed it and what answer they wanted to get. Because it does. I think in the right place, that sort of testing functionality, it really does. You can see the effect of it. But then in other types of video, it's so elusive. Is it music? Is it a line of dialogue? I think that, if you attach that test to the right thing, then you're going to get some really interesting results, or just really results that don't help you going down the track. They might help you for that particular execution.
Yeah, look, I think, we're all looking for the silver bullet that makes our content, which can sometimes come across as a little bit fluffy and a bit sort of, creative, and not particularly strategic, or lacking a bit of precision maybe. We're all looking for data and, reasons to try things because we think it's going to work. But, at the end of the day, the only way to find out is to do it and try it and measure it and try again. But sometimes... Sorry, that's my Google Home getting involved. What did you hear?
Welcome to Google Home. To get started, download the Google Home app on a phone or
See, this is why we do it live. It's just so experiential. I could probably...
I said Google once too many times, and she's like...
I could probably order you a pizza right now.
Audio. Us video people, we just don't get it.
So that is a great segue to talk about authenticity, because this is one thing that is playing on my mind, is this idea that we're all on video at the moment, and we're all constantly looking at screens. And we've also watched so many, I watched The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and he does it now from his living room. And to be honest, I can't remember what it used to be like, and I'm not sure whether I care. What I want to know is this a new... are we going to get sick of this? Because this is going to start feeling very much the same after a while, and or are we going to just see a new sort of realm of authenticity where we may not need some of the things that we used to sort of assume were part of video?
I've been thinking about this since we kind of had our chat before. I just don't know. I don't know. I've come from a very shiny content world, obviously at Red Bull, it was authentic, real people doing amazing stuff for real, but it was, we had lots of money and lots of cool toys. And, I guess the assumption then was, bigger is better, and more money you have, the better the content will be. So it's still a bit of it's a constant journey, like away from that into all the different opportunities of content. I think what's interesting, is, and I'm not an expert on influencers by any means, but obviously this kind of look at me, kind of flashy authenticity that we've been seeing for the last few years, where people present their real selves, but their real selves is super beautiful and always groomed and always perfect and always on amazing holidays. I think there's been a real shock in that kind of space, and it'll be interesting to see whether we've woken up a little bit from that and we're not believing that kind of authenticity anymore.
Yep.
I think that definitely for businesses, they've had so much practice now creating video communications of all different shapes and sizes for different budgets, that why would you spend loads of money and time on a really polished piece of content, for internal comms or whatnot, if you don't have to? But there'll be businesses where they realize that actually how much work goes into that kind of content to make it really good and really effective. And I don't know. I definitely have been noticing formats like shows that have been popping up. Like the other day, I watched a reunion of the Goonies cast, and Josh Gad, who's Sven in Frozen, in case you're a fan, brought them all together. And he's been doing this behind the scenes for different movies, and I was just gripped. It was the most interesting thing I'd seen, come up on Facebook Watch forever. So that could not and would not have happened in another time. So will we start to see different formats like that coming out? Hopefully. Will we see like more social first content and original content for social channels? Probably. Is it going to change the whole industry? I don't think so, but there's only one way to find out.
Yeah, good work will always sort of rise to the top, won't it? Like in the end, people will look
Yeah.
at stuff that makes them feel good. So
Yeah, and I think that we know how much work goes into that kind of good work. Like there's occasionally the sort of things that are done in a moment that are wonderful, but we know how much planning and thought goes into crafting a really great piece of content that will really move people and stand the test of time. So I think that will always be around, but these immediate experiences where people aren't so worried about, the fact that you can see my playroom, my DVD collection. Yeah, cool. And that's probably something I might be so worried about now, but I don't know how that will play out for our business.
Yeah. So let's finish up by sort of summarizing, like we always try and look at in these sessions, what's happened in the past, how we're dealing with the current. But let's finish up with some sort of short tips on what people can do to make better video in the future. And obviously you see a lot of video teams, you see a lot of briefs. What are the like 5 things that make great video content, or even a great video content process, and what doesn't?
Okay. I know I should have prepared this. Sorry, Mark. I'm actually going to be kind of making this up. But I think that we are like the in-housing trend and platforms like Janeiro facilitating more immediate contact between creators and clients. I think one of my tips would be, work on your pitching and client management process, because what we see is that creators who do really well in our kind of world are really good at selling an idea, especially in this remote world where you may not be pitching face to face for a really long time. How can you translate that into really good remote pitching, really good remote client management, and creating a really good experience of a video production from start to finish for clients? That's definitely something that we see as very important to the creative process. So, hug your producer and hold them close. I think that just being really open to different platforms and the role the platform takes in influencing your idea is that, we can no longer really rely on, we're going to do the 60-second film, 16 by 9, and then if I see the word cut downs, it always makes me feel a bit sad, because I feel like it's sort of missing what's happening now is that you need to be thinking about each platform, each channel specifically as you come up with your idea and as you plan your production. And that's a really important thing that we're just not seeing enough of, particularly because those platforms change your content quite significantly. And I think that this is a question for all of us, how can we help our clients make more immediate connections with their audiences if they can't be with them in the same space? Doesn't look like it's going to be until the end of the year before big events launch, and even then, who knows? So that's a big opportunity now and in the next 6 months. Like, how can video creators help bridge that gap? And is it using kind of techniques and tools like AR and VR and live, or is it just the way you tell stories and the ideas you come up with? And I think be as experimental as you can be, because our clients are having to, get on a dime and, try new things, and they're being more experimental and flexible than ever before, and we need to meet them there and do the same, and not just throw out the old rule books and try and find new innovative ways of solving problems and, coming up with cool ideas to do, because we don't know what things are going to look like around the corner. Is that 5? That felt like 4, but
I think that's 4. But let's end on optimism or pessimism. Sort of, we talked before this session about, are we entering a communications boom, or are we in for hard times in the video industry over the next 6 months?
Look, I think both. I think that will come down to the individual business or person and their own personal experience of it. I think there's going to be some really great people leaving traditional businesses and going into the freelance world, which is a huge opportunity for clients to work with all different types of amazing people. So I'm very optimistic for clients that they're going to get a lot of really good value out of the next 12 months or something. I think for individual businesses it's going to be hard. Like, we're all of us have seen a big change in our business, but we're seeing really positive trends in the right direction, as at the end of the day brands and businesses can't stop. That's kind of giving up. So I definitely think we'll see more and more work coming through. I just don't think it's going to look the same as it did before. So if you're fighting to protect the status quo, that you might find that's a hard fight to win.
Yeah. So, like interesting times, I think, people work in this industry because they like change. So hopefully we're quite well attuned to this, this next period. Thank you.
Great news for small businesses. I think there's a real opportunity for independent, nimble businesses to rise up and, show the world what they can do. So that's definitely a positive.
Yeah, cool. Thanks so much for chatting with us. I will. I think someone's already done it, but we'll chuck the production possibilities map that you were sort of talking about up in on Twitter and in the comments on this YouTube video if it hasn't already gone in there. Also, I'm sorry we didn't get to everyone's question, but I'm going to put you on the spot, Christie, and say, if you, we'll put this episode up on YouTube after, not YouTube, we'll put this episode up on LinkedIn after this. And if you have a question that we didn't get to, pop it in the comments. And Christie is so onto LinkedIn that she is totally going to answer those questions. Otherwise, thank you, again, for taking the time. Thanks again for taking the time. Thanks to everyone for being on the chat. I've been watching it sort of flow through. It's great to hear everyone's sort of perspectives. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. I think Justin is taking hosting of the next one. It's going to be on UX, so that's going to be cool because we haven't got to that topic yet. As said, if you want to follow along, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, we're now on YouTube. We're pretty much everywhere. If you're trying to find us and you can't find us, there's obviously something wrong with your content game. But that's it for now. Thanks very much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. See ya.